Okay, all right. Today we are going to talk about listing input and management, but let's go ahead and go through the formalities really quick, and then I can just pray that I've got it set up right. So here we are, Greater San Diego Association of Realtors, doing a webinar. There's my name, there's my telephone number, and there is my email address if you need to get a hold of me. And I'll show that again to you later on today, just so that you've, in case you want to send me an email. We're going to be talking about listing input and management, which is kind of a neat subject because it's really kind of the essence of our entire business is listings. There's those who believe that you either list or perish, one or the other. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to show you the way to do it and how to get there quickly and how to get it done fairly efficiently. The old admonitions, while a lot of this stuff that we talk about today may sound like it's legal, but it's not. I'm not a practicing attorney. I do a lot of trial work, but mostly defensive real estate brokers as an expert witness. Conversation is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of your broker, nor for that of your attorney. Please consult with them as appropriate. So that being said, normally you would look for an email to come from SDAR today. I'm going to send them a copy of our listing input sheet that I'm going to show you here in a short bit. But normally, so for example, tomorrow we'll be doing how to read a preliminary title report. They will automatically send you a copy of all the material that is used just for attending the webinar. Same thing in the afternoon. We're talking about the buyer representation agreement, and they will send you all of the material that we use for that. So that's an automatic thing, and SDAR, being the great people that they are, have figured out that we need to get our stuff pretty quickly. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay. All right. That being said, let me see who's my audience. Deirdre, welcome back. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and get started with our subject matter. So today we are going to take a look at how I got in here. And the way that I got in here was I went to the SDAR website. And by the way, from here I can look for education and things like that. But it's all about single sign-on. Some of you will remember that it used to be that you had to go through this, through a different portal to get to the MLS. But now that we own the MLS, it makes it a lot easier for you and I to access it without having to go through a lot of other trouble. In fact, a lot of things that we can access once we've logged in, and here's what we look like when we log in. We can get access to Paragon, zip forms, CRS data, fast stats, all this stuff, most of which I do trainings here for your benefit, and hopefully you're getting an opportunity to use that. Here's tomorrow's webinar coming up, how to read a preliminary title report. That's always fun. And then right after that, we're going to be doing paragraphs 4 through 6 of the buyer representation agreement. So that's what the calendar looks like. So what I did here is I clicked on Paragon. It's my quick link, so it gets me there fast. Now, again, I could always go to sdmls.com and then go through a bunch of steps to get there. But I always like coming here anyway, just to look at what's available to me or what's going on today in terms of current events and things like that. Okay. So that being said, let's go ahead and get launching. I'm going to click on my Paragon link. I now have one that says Paragon. Obviously it has the MLS in front of us. And since today's subject is listing input and management, there's really only one way to get in there. And that's going to be by going over here to where it says listings. Now, once again, I'm in Paragon, so I'm going to do a quick scan of what's going on. For example, I was asked questions today about coming soon listings and things like that. And this is where we're going to get, that information fairly currently. Okay. All right. So I like that. And it's interesting that I get questions a lot of times, a lot of which are just right on the homepage. Okay. So let's talk about my listing input, and we'll go ahead and we'll create a faux listing, as we say. I'm going to go here to listings. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to get a couple of features. I'm going to either add a listing, or I'm going to use central lock, or I'm going to maintain a listing that I already have, or I'm going to geocode quality search. Well, today we're talking about adding a listing, and the most common one is going to be my residential listing. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. and it's going to pop up my field for creating a new listing. Okay, so let's talk about this part really quick, because this is where we can have some serious fun. At this point, I'm only beginning the process. You can see over here on the left hand side, I don't even have a photo in here yet. I can maintain my listing, but that's all I can do, because at this point it is only saving it. At this point, it's only saving it as a partial. Okay, all right, over here on the left hand side, tells me I have 223 possible input fields. The number of required fields is 75, but just by virtue of me opening up the listing, I've only got 64 left to go. So that's pretty good news. All right, okay, so reading across the top from left to right, I've got my save button. If I hover over it, I see that I can either save the listing. I'm going to recommend that you not do it at this point, because if you do, you're going to get hit with a series of questions that is going to keep you here all day. It won't let you out of it until you answer all the questions, okay? And then you might just give up out of sheer frustration. So at some point, I'm going to click as save partial until I'm ready to go live in the MLS. But the save listing is reserved for when I'm completely done. And this number of fields down here is down to either probably down to a 1 or a 0. Okay, save as partial is probably the next thing that I'm going to do. You'll notice that there's not much for me to do in here. These P's indicate that these are fields that are required. Let me make sure you can see my screen. Yes, okay. So these P's indicate to you that those are fields that are required in order to do a partial save. So if I was to try to do a partial save right now, it wouldn't let me do that until I fill those out. It wants a zip code. It wants certain things that I'm going to have to provide it with. And by default, the program opens up with the first set of categories, which is called listing facts, open, and it shows all of the fields. Okay. All right. If I scroll down, I can see where my other fields are. I have general, I have features, I have data share, things like that. So the next part of what I'm going to do here is look at my tax autofill. Now, I really like tax autofill, and the reason is because it will populate those fields that are a matter of record at the time that I'm doing this. The R's, Deirdre, the R's stand for required fields. Okay, so the R's are required before you save it as a full listing. Right there, save listing. The save as partial, these P's are required to all be filled in before I can save it as a partial listing. But the R's are required before I can finally save it as a save listing or as a total listing, okay? And so your question's a really good one, and I'm going to show you in a minute that we think that open space is better. So, you might decide not to fill out fields unless they have an R next to them. That's always a possibility, but I certainly wouldn't want to make up any information. So, for example, I have to have a type of class of listing. And if you remember, we had either residential, or if I go up here, I got listings. I'm sorry, let me back up. If I go over here, I've got residential, I've got 2 to 4 units, lots and land, residential rental, and then any of these as well as possibilities for me. So in our case, we chose residential, which is where we are. So that's obviously a required field, because the system has to know what type of listing are you taking, okay? And so when I do a residential, and again, let me just use this for a second. When I'm doing a residential property, I'm doing a single family home. So whether it's a single family attached or detached, it can be an attached unit, it can be a detached unit, but it won't be units. Units are going to be 2 to 4. Okay, so you normally in a unit, when I talk about a 2 to 4, they are for income purposes, although the owner could live in one of them. And so some interesting conversation came about when we compare that to what we talk about in civil code. So when we talk about like the transfer disclosure statement has to do with residential 1 to 4, Okay, and then anything a 5 or greater, whether it's a 5-plex or 6 or 7 or greater, is governed by civil code. So in our case, we looked at residential rentals. So now this could be a house, it could be a townhouse, it could be a condominium, anything other than what would be multiple units for purposes of income producing. So for example, if I was going to list one side of a duplex, then I would use residential. But if I was on one side of a duplex would be essentially the same physical structure, it would be a twin home for you and me. But when I'm going to list a duplex where the owner is using it as income producing and there are 2 units, then I would use 2 to 4. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, hit me with a question down here at the bottom. And Deirdre, thank you for that one. Okay, so when I do my tax autofill, and I think I'm going to go through all these and then I'm going to come back to tax autofill. You're welcome, Deirdre, and thank you. I appreciate the question. I really do. It helps me to know somebody's out there. Okay, so I can't see you, but you can see me. So tax autofill, I really like tax autofill, again, because it's going to populate into the program those features that are in the county tax database. And again, that saves me having to look up things. And there's a couple of really important things that are in the tax database that I want to make sure I get right. For example, the square footage of the property. Your MLS requires that you input square footage, and yet square footage is the #1 litigated issue against real estate agents. And so, so square footage is going to be an important concept. And so I want to make sure that I'm not fudging on the material or not pulling up, putting in something other than what the tax record says. And if I do something like that, as I tell in all my classes, you need to be prepared to defend that change, okay? But it's also going to give me another really important piece of information, as in the year built. And if the year built of the property is built, and this comes up with us all the time, we do transaction management. So we have a property that was built in 1978 or 1977 or 1976. That's going to trigger my lead-based paint requirement, right? Okay. But if the property is built in 1960 or 1959 or 1958, then it's going to trigger my earthquake requirement, my earthquake disclosure hazards booklet, right? Okay. So those are going to be important things. That's why I really like that tax autofill. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in just one second. Reset fields, I'm probably not going to do that while I'm inputting a listing, because that's literally going to take you back to 0. That says I just didn't like what I did, and I'm just going to reset everything. And then Deirdre, so required only are those things that are required in the MLS. But if I click this button, watch what's going to happen. I've got fields in here that are not required, like co-listing agent. If I click required only, then it's only going to ask me for those fields that are required. Okay. Now that's good news, but it's also could be bad news, because you could have some fields in there where you have input that would help in the marketing of the property, but you have just eliminated a field that may have been a voluntary field or a not required field. So I can go back up here to where it says display all, click display all, and then you can see I can get a whole bunch of fields back again, like Thomas Brothers map coordinates, things like that, that I might otherwise not use, but now I have the option of using them. But again, if I click on required only, then I'm only going to see those fields that are required. So if I'm in a hurry and I'm inputting the listing really fast, I'm going to use my tax autofill, and then maybe I'll use my required only because I just want to get the minimum in there. But again, as we all know, you get what you pay for, and if you rush through it and you only put in the minimum, you might be missing some opportunities that may be presenting themselves. And I frequently remind people that this market that we're experiencing right now is just another market, folks. It may feel like it's the only thing you've ever known, but it wasn't that long ago that the market was completely different. And I can tell you, in January of 2012, I do a lot of trial work on market conditions in San Diego. I'm considered an expert. This market too shall change. And in January of 12, it just went crazy. But a lot of people don't remember what it looked like from August of '05 to January of 12. And we need to remember that this market too will change. So be prepared for all markets, be adjustable in your business. And this is how we're gonna do that. Prepare for this while you have the time to do so, okay? All right, so open all. So down here, if I scroll down, you can see that I've got all of my stuff is opened up. All of the little subs, see the gray bars, all the little sub bars are open, okay? But I might decide, I don't want all those open. I might want to do close all, in which case now that tightens up the package quite a bit, and then I'm just going to open this one and do this one first, okay? All right, so that's my open all, that's my close all. Let's go back, save. Nope, not gonna do that, right? I'm not gonna do save listing. I'm not gonna do save as partial because I haven't input some of these things yet, okay? So we're gonna go through the process. I'm gonna pull up CRS tax autofill, and we're gonna go ahead and find a property. So I have to, by default, type in the county. So I just start typing it. It automatically gives me my drop down. I grab San Diego, but now I've got to do something with a first name or a last name or a street number. So let's make one up. Let's do 811, and then let's call it America. Just because we're very patriotic, America Way. And then let's, and again, this is the minimum amount of information I'm going to put in here for right now. And if I look up here, now I can see that there is one property that matches that bill. So now I'm going to do a search, and over here on the right-hand side, I can see all of the data that I've got in my data field. I click on a search. It's going to pop up 811 America Way. There it is in Del Mar. I'm going to click the box in front of it. And again, please slow me down if I'm going too fast, but this is the easiest way to automatically populate a lot of information in the field. So there's my 811 America Way. Now I want to go up here to autofill. I'm going to click on autofill. Now it's going to give me a series of the data that shows up in the county tax record, and I'm going to decide whether or not I want to include these into the listing, okay? Now I have this conversation with people who've been in the business for a long time, and I can tell you it's like one of those divining moments when we realize, wow, that's pretty cool stuff. So here's bedrooms, here's square footage, here's my fireplace. It actually has a fireplace. The program, the county says it doesn't. It's one of those little zero clearance fireplaces. I know this because I used to own this property. And so bathrooms is going to be 2, full baths is going to be 2, half baths is going to be a 1. That's about right. Gives me all this. It is a townhome, by the way, so the square footage isn't going to really be important. So I might uncheck those figures, right? Okay, so how many acres does it have? It may not be important to me, but I would say by default, I'm going to take the default value anyway. Here's my, I mentioned it earlier, my Thomas Brothers map coordinates. I don't think anybody's using a Thomas guide anymore. Parking garage, says 0. I know for a fact it's a 2-car attached garage. All the rest of this, I like everything. Look down here, field number 93, one of my most important fields, and that is my assessor's parcel number. Okay, all right, so year built shows 85. So as we said a minute ago, I'm not now triggering on lead-based paint. I'm clearly not triggering on my earthquake hazards. So that's going to be pretty good. It shows me that the official zip code is 92014. So this property happens to be located east of I-5, north of Via de la Valle in a community called Spindrift. And again, this tells me that that is in the 92014 zip code. So therefore, City of Del Mar services. It's actually one of those places where there's 3 different cities that kind of work in that area: Solana Beach, Del Mar, and San Diego. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save and watch what it does in here. It's going to go ahead, look, it put my assessor's parcel number in there. It put my address the way it is at the post office, which is important. It's got my county, it's got my zip code. Now I'm not worried about whether or not I got it right. You know, a lot of people don't know. The reason I mentioned that the property is located east of I-5 is a lot of people think that Del Mar only is west of I-5, and that's definitely not true. It's also not true that all properties west of I-5 in the 92014 zip code are within the city of Del Mar, because the city of Del Mar is only really 4.5 square miles. So I don't have to worry about all that stuff if I just go ahead and accept the data from the county tax record, okay? So One of the things that I'm going to have to do, and I'll come back to it in a minute, is validate my, well, let's do it now. Validate my map. I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to click on my map. It's going to say, is this roughly where the property is located? And the answer is yes. You all recognize Flower Hill Mall right here. And then there's this little driveway that goes up here behind it. And then this property is literally located. I'm going to move it up just a little bit because it's really kind of right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So now it has saved the geocoding. It will not allow me to save the listing until I've done that. Okay, and then there's my Thomas Brothers coordinates, but I still have some R's left open. Okay, so we're not going to obviously fill in the entire listing, but I do want to show you what these fields mean. Okay, so, but look what I have. I've got what is the status of my listing. So I'm going to have to put something in there. It's either going to be active or coming soon. Remember, if you put in coming soon, then what that means is that when within 21 days, if nothing has happened with the listing, we're going to automatically put it into active. Okay, and coming soon means that you can put it in the MLS, you can share it with other members of the real estate community, but it will not go out to Pillow or Ghoulia or any of those other third-party aggregators. It's pretty much just shared internally until such time as as you make it active. And the minute you start marketing the property for sale, then you have to change the status from coming soon to active. Okay, so I have my current agent. That's going to be me for purposes of our conversation. And notice this field was number 80. If I'm wondering what my fields could be in here, I just click on status, and there's my 2. I can also take a look, hover over the question mark, and it discusses MLS Rule 10.1.1. Talking about whether or not the property is contingent or whether it's active. Okay, everybody good? I can have a co-listing agent. That co-listing agent is supposed to be someone within my office. So let's put in Linda, and it should pop up my choices. Well, see, it's going to give me a whole bunch of course, make a liar out of me. Type in Linda Driley, and there aren't a whole lot of Linda Drileys. Thank God, there she is. And I'm going to click on her. So now I have a co-listing agent if I have someone that I'm working with within the company. Okay, so then the listing office ID information shows up. So does the co-listing office ID. If I put in a different agent from an outside company, then that company name will show up as well. Notice that I have my R and my P in front of the listing date. So let's pull up my map and let's click in today's date, the 14th, and then however long. Now remember, the dates that are going into the multiple listing service must match what's on your listing agreement. Okay, so don't, listen, if the MLS calls you and says, we want a copy of your listing agreement, these dates have got to match. So at this point right now, since we're towards the second half of the year, we tend to list our properties to go to the end of December. That's just what we tend to do. So we would do something like this, and that would be, again, whatever, excuse me, again, whatever is in my listing agreement is what's going to appear here. Okay, all right. So my R fields, the calendar is a really nice feature, by the way. I like that a lot. My R fields are fields, again, that I'm going to have to put in. So in here, I might put in, I mean, there's no way this property's worth that much yet, but $1 million. I got my 3 zeros trailing. So essentially, you all see what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what my R's look like. Okay, all right. Now, so I have a whole bunch left. Now, do I have enough to be able to save it as a partial? Now, the reason that that's important is because I want to be able to walk away from it and be able to come back to it and finish it later. And if I don't have all the partials done, then it won't let me do that. And so obviously, you're going to have times where, you're going to get called, you're in the middle of a listing input. It's not a 1-minute process. All right. But you might get called away from the computer, whatever. Once you've saved it as a partial, it auto saves every 5 minutes. Okay. So down here, what was I looking at? Here's my P again, my residential styles. I'm going to call it an attached because it is attached. It is a townhome. So let me see I have townhome available to me. So if I click on that, obviously it can only be one property type at a time. So I'm going to hit save. That's my P. Now let me see, question. Let's take a look at our question. What's the difference between community and neighborhood? Okay, let's take a look at that. So when I'm looking, you're up where was I? Here we go. Community in my neighborhood. So when I hover here and I go community, my communities are actually defined. So community is a bigger picture, neighborhood is a smaller picture. So for example, this one's going to be in Del Mar. So I'm going to scroll down, and it's not on this page. I'm going to go to the next page. And Deirdre, thanks for asking that question, because there's a lot of things I can do when I hit that magnifying glass. I can also start typing in Del Mar. So DEL. Okay, and then look, all my Del Mars show up. And East Del Mar is what we used to call Carmel Valley. Gosh, 25 years ago, before they changed their name to wanting to be known as Carmel Valley, they were known as East Del Mar or Del Mar East. And so their code was EDM. So I'm going to click on DLM, which is Del Mar, and I'm going to click on Save. All right, so now I've satisfied my community requirement, but notice that my neighborhood requirement is open, okay? So one of the things that I mentioned to you earlier was that, and this is in a community called Spindrift Del Mar, and so I'm going to go ahead, since it is required, it's a good idea if I know what that neighborhood name is. Now, a lot of ways you can find this out, and I'm sure all of you, when you before you take the listing, you've ordered a property profile, sold comps, and any recorded documents, because you know that those are going to be important to you later, okay? And in that property profile, you're going to see the legal description of the property, and you're going to see that the legal description calls it Spindrift Del Mar. Okay, so that's where I got that from, but that's going to be really important for you to have a property profile, sold comps, any recorded documents prior to putting this into the MLS. You're welcome, Deirdre. Thank you. Good question. Okay, so notice that that this is going to be the field there until I tab out of it. So I want to tab out of it, and then that's going to save that in there. What's my cross street? My cross street's going to be San Andres. Okay, so I'm not heading us in a direction that we will be completely accepting this listing, but that is the cross street for the property. And so I'm going to put that in there. Now, the rest of this, take a look down here. I've got my bedrooms, I've got my bathrooms, I got my half bath, I got my square footage. This was all automatically populated for me. Buyer broker percentage commission. So I like to pay agents really well. I like to pay 10% commissions to the buyer's broker. So I need to put in a field. It's either going to be that field, or I can put in here a different field. I can put in $1 million. Okay, or in that case, that's only 100,000, but that's pretty good. So I only need to have one or the other. You see what I'm doing here? So we like to pay a percentage of sales price, and so we're going to put in 10% up here. Okay, everybody good? That's what we like to do. You do whatever your broker wants you to do. Variable rate commission, what variable rate commission means is that did you make a deal with the seller at the time of the listing that you would give them a break if you brought in the buyer? Okay, and the answer here is no. We think that we're working twice as hard, so we deserve to get paid twice as much. And frankly, we double end a lot of our properties, but we do them by putting them in the multiple listing service first. How can I start listing input before knowing the listing date? Sellers have not yet signed the listing agreement, yet we know we will be listing. Lots of details on the property, and I'd like to jumpstart the partial listing. Marie, here's what I worry about if I start in advance. First of all, I cannot save the listing as an active listing until I have a signed listing agreement by all parties. So as I have said in the past, you can't break anything. Go ahead in here and play with it, but you can't start the listing date until the actual listing is signed signed by the sellers, whether electronically or whether wet signature. Okay, so if you want to just go in there and play, just don't hit save, right? Don't hit save as partial, don't hit any kind of save, but you can go in there and play. Don't be afraid of it, okay? And there's nothing that you can do that's going to break the system. And if you make a mistake and you accidentally save it, then you need to send an email right away to help at sdmls.com, and they will help you get rid of that listing, and tell them I said it was okay for you to play, but I did tell you not to save the listing. Okay, all right, can I make up the date to save as partial? And okay, so we're going to kind of do that right now. So can I make up a date to save it as a partial and then change the list date when the agreement is signed? here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead. I put in a date here. So you saw the date that I put in. I put in today's date as the listing date. Remember, you need to, once you do have the listing agreement signed by all of the necessary parties, you must have it in the MLS as active within 48 hours, unless you have an authorization to exclude or an SELM form that CAR provides for you. It was a copy of our form that we created at the old Sandacor. So the answer is, I am inputting a listing. I'm putting in fields that are required, fields that are partial, things like that. But when I go in here, I'm going to click it as save as partial, but I'm not going to save it as a full listing unless I actually have the signed listing agreement. So Marie, to answer your question, you can do that. It's just that, remember, you're going to want to go back and delete it later if you don't get the listing. Okay, so just whatever you do not put it in the MLS as a full listing, save listing. Don't do that until you actually have the signed listing agreement. My only worry is, depending on how you do it, you might end up have started the clock on the market time on it, but I think you're going to be okay here. Okay, so did I answer that question all right? Good question. Yeah, and again, I think you can go in and play with it. The truly exceptionally wonderful people at SDMLS created a dummy account for me to get into so that I could go ahead and show you a listing that wouldn't actually live in the MLS. But I think it's just, for me, I just like to go ahead and live life dangerously, and so that's why I'm doing it live. Okay, all right, Marie, thank you. Good question. Let's keep them coming. Okay, all right, so what else? Anything else in here? So anything else of note? My question's going to be, am I entry only? Entry only would mean that I was a broker that was only putting it into the multiple listing service, and that was the only service I was going to provide. So essentially an open listing. The answer is no. We don't do those kinds of listings. Limited service, we're full service, so the answer is no. And then short sale, if it's a short sale property, in this case, the answer is no, but I can tell you that we do a lot of short sales, even in this economy. We have an attorney, a bankruptcy attorney, who is a broker within our office, who gets a lot of listings for short sales. So we do a lot of those. Is it a virtual office website listing? Yeah, go for it. Internet syndication, sure. That means it goes to Pillow and Goulia and all those other places. IDX solution, yes, we want to share with everybody so that all the other real estate agents share their listings with us and we share our listings with them. We like the full address. AVM is the automated evaluation model. And again, if I have a question about it, I just hover over the question mark on the right-hand side. Automated valuation model, computerized method for estimating the value of a property. If no is selected, val sites can't calculate an AVM value for the listing. Okay. Do we want it on realtor.com? Sure. Do we want people to be able to allow comments and review? And so what does that mean? I click on the question mark, often referred to as a blog. If I answer yes, which we do, then the seller has agreed to allow others to make comments on the val sites concerning the listing. So just make sure that when you do your listing input sheet that you have checked that field. Okay, what is the value to a seller to say yes to AVM? And that's just, well, just like it says right here. So, sorry, back up, AVM field is right here. If you don't say yes, then they can't calculate the value on the val websites. Now, on that note, I do want to show you what we use for a listing input sheet, and I'm going to say that, and then I don't see it on my screen. Let me see if I can find that really quick. There it is. Okay, I had pulled it up, but it doesn't seem to want to have saved it. So let me show you what our listing input sheet looks like. Where did she go here? There it is, and it says it's not happy with me because I've got things going pretty quickly. So I'm going to show you here real quick what our listing input sheet looks like. So now this is important, and I'm going to tell you, I just don't really know many people that do it anymore. Most people will just input the listing on the fly, as we say. So literally, excuse me. Literally, they will manually input the listing, which can take you forever, versus did you have a listing input sheet form filled out? Okay, so this is going to be available to you. Let me show you where. I'm going to go back into my MLS really quick. If I go up here to MLS documents, can you all see that screen? I want to make sure you can see it. Yes, you can. I'm going to go up here into MLS documents. I'm going to click on that button. And then I'm going to scroll down here where it says San Diego Association of Realtors folder. Right here it says MLS input forms. And then the very first one in here is my residential PDF. Okay, and you'll notice here's all the property types that correspond to what we saw up in the search button earlier. Okay, all right, so that's why I wanted to show you what that listing input sheet looks like, because this is what we use in our office. We go ahead and we create that, we printed that form, essentially saved it as a PDF, and then we went ahead and we just started filling in. Now, we already know, as a broker, we already know there are certain things that are going to be common across all of these fields. So we've stepped it up a little bit for our agents. So here's our listing office number, our listing office's name, other information that's going to be generic. We don't do variable rate commissions. We don't do entry level only. We don't do limited service. We don't know if it's a short sale. Down here, yeah, we allow virtual office websites. Does everybody see what I'm talking about? This corresponds to, and this again, this document is quite a few pages long, and we input this. The blue fields are those fields that are required, but note that down at the bottom of the page is a place for the seller to sign. And since we're big risk managers in this company, we want to make sure that we don't get ourselves into trouble. We fill out the form with the seller at the time of the listing appointment, and then we have the seller sign it. Now, I think we should remove optional and make it required, but the seller signs it and says everything that you filled in above here is all accurate. And so now guess what? I've got a co-defendant in the event that I get sued on information that's in the multiple listing service. And I apologize, that's just the way that we think. But again, we're in a very litigious business, and so we want to make sure. Hi, Stephanie, welcome. Robinson, welcome. Mary, your emails are bouncing, hon. I'm sending you emails. I'm sending you our newsletter. I hope that you're getting those, but it's showing me that they're bouncing. So make sure you get back to me. Hi, Dottie. Make sure you get back to me on that. I don't know why they're bouncing, okay? Maybe you're getting them, it's just telling me they're bouncing. Okay, so that's my listing input sheet. And I'm gonna tell you, whenever I have a question like, what is that field? So like Marie, a second ago, is like, what is that field for parking? Oh, here it is right here. It's gonna be the AW field, and here's what they correspond to. Notice blue, my approximate room dimensions. So remember that those are a required thing. Remember when we did the class on how to create a winning listing presentation, we said you need to take a tape measure with you. I had somebody measuring yesterday with one of those little things with the red dot at the other end of it, and it just makes me insane, right? I like tape measures, but I need to have my room dimensions, and I need to have a picture of the front of the property for purposes of putting it into the multiple listing service. Okay, all right, hi Dottie, good. Okay, all right. So that, let me take us back now to our listing input program. And here we go. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go back over to my listing, and here's my listing as I was. Okay. So is everybody with me so far? Listing type, I've got to have that. So we only do exclusive authorization right to sell. The reason exclusive agency is frequently picked accidentally, that would be an exclusive agency form. And the reason that's picked is because it shows up first in the alphabet. But our exclusive authorization right to sell is an exclusive right listing. So I would want to check that R box. Okay, so frequently you'll see an EA listing. That EA listing it could be, the EA, remember, again, says that the seller can sell the property themselves without paying compensation to the brokers. But most times what the broker's meaning to say is that I have an exclusive authorization right to sell. Are there any age restrictions? I don't know. Age discrimination is rampant at the same time that if I don't know, I don't know. I may put none known, but I have to answer something in there, okay? If it's a 55 plus community or a 62 plus community, I might put in one of these other two fields, okay? So that's that. Now here's an example of kind of white space. If I don't know what jurisdiction it's in, is it in the incorporated area or the unincorporated area? unincorporated area. Notice it doesn't have an R next to it, and I would just assume that field not populate so that people can see through all the data. Pets aren't necessarily a required field. If I was doing a rental, then it might be more important to me, but there's no such thing as a property that doesn't have a pet restriction on it. So if you know that the community allows pets, then you might use allowed with a restriction, but I'm not going to say yes, because then I'm going to find out later on that I can't bring in my pet llama. And if I can't bring in my pet llama, it's a pet to me. It's not even a therapy llama, so it's a pet llama. And so you told me I could have pets. So if you're not sure, don't answer it. A sign on the property is not required. Probably a good idea. 65% of our calls still come from signs. So these are some examples of things that we usually don't fill out, but if you do, use them to your advantage. Year-built source. Listen, I'm going to tell you, I like putting in where I got my information. I got my information from the county assessor's record, or I got it from an appraiser. If an appraiser did it, forget estimated. Everything you've got says that it's estimated. We still get sued. So public records, maybe maybe the seller says, I know the MLS, I know the tax record shows it's got 1,328 square feet, but I added a 16-story high rise. So now it's, this. So whatever it is, quote the source, because remember that you want to be the source of the source, not the source. So you want to actually quote where you got your information from. And in this case, I'm going to put in the assessor's record, even though it's not a required field. I want them to be able to, go to the county to get that information. Okay, everybody good? Good. I've answered most of the questions. So that's going to be under my primary tabs. So now I'm really excited. I'm pretty sure I got all my P's taken care of. I'm going to go save it as a partial listing. And then if I did not get all the P's, then it would have told me that. So then now I see that it's been partially saved. So Marie, to answer your question from earlier, I might be saving the listing as a partial listing until I can come back and finish it. Maybe I'm still gathering information. So once again, if I have saved the listing input sheet and I have actually filled it out, I can probably get through this all in one sitting. Okay. All right. Again, I want to accept the fields that are already in the tax record. So now I can make a decision. If I don't complete it within 12 months, it'll be removed automatically from the system. So as I said before, no harm, no foul. We're not going to worry about it. I can either now continue my input. If I hit finished, then it's going to log me out of the listing input part of the program. And I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to keep going. So I'm going to hit on continue my input. It's going to pop this up. Now notice a couple of things have changed. So one of them is it's got a partial listing number that's been assigned to it, 333957. That doesn't mean anything really to you for now, but later on when I go, back to look for it, depending on how many listings you're doing, that might become important. But also over on the left-hand side, I've got that maintain listing panel, but now I can also add and edit pictures, and those are the coolest things you're going to do. Then I can view the detail report, what it looks like so far, and then I can add and edit documents. So remember what I said earlier, as far as pictures are concerned, I'm going to need at least a primary photo, okay, no matter what, within 72 hours. If I don't put a primary photo in there, that's a $150 ticket. So, and maybe you take a picture of the front of the house with your camera, phone, or whatever. I don't recommend it, but if you do that, because you've ordered the full blowout Matterport and all these crazy things that they're doing today, which some of them are really impressive, but that may take you a couple days to get that. But you must have a primary photo. Don't be crying that I got a ticket because I didn't have any photos in there. The goal here is to have at least a primary photo to avoid us having a whole bunch of listings in the MLS that have no pictures on them. They look like the pictures were taken during a blizzard. Okay. All right. But then underneath pictures as a requirement is my add edit document. So I did this talk today for the Del Mar pitch session. Dottie, you were there. And I said that when we take a listing, we actually add those PED forms. So we're going to add a new PED form in here. So as the listing agent, we can go ahead and create the PED form, for the showing of the property in the listing itself in the Zip Forms program. And now we can go ahead and load that PED form into this program, so that agents that are, so I would type in here, I would type in my PED, right? And then hit save, okay? It wants me to select a file. Obviously, I didn't pull one up. So, but I put that in there as a convenience to buyers agents, so they don't have to keep pulling up the form. So like one of the other brokers that was on the call this morning said, "Oh wow, what a great idea!" So now what they're going to do is the same thing I'm doing. I'm kind of starting this rush where people are going ahead and creating a PED form and Zip Forms for this listing. Okay, so since this is my listing, I'm going to put that form in here. So now that the agent that's going to show the property, I'm going to put in my remarks section, please use the PED form that is associated with this property under documents. And the agents can see that, the public can't, but now the agent can see that, and I make it easier on the agent because I want to create a minimum amount of resistance between them showing the property once they have a client that's interested in it. Okay, it works really well, folks. I get so many compliments on it, and I would recommend that you do that. And the alternative, you can always create a template for just PED forms, but then you got to go back in, you got to type in MLS or type in addresses and things like that. Okay, everybody good with that? I'm going to go back to maintaining the listing. Notice down here on the left hand side, my original 200, and actually that was 224 before. 75 fields are required on this listing input, and I now have 40 left. So I've actually done 35 of my fields already, and I feel like I'm almost halfway through, and yet I feel like I've just gotten started, and that's because I did the things I needed to do as I went along. Okay, so I'm going to go down here to the bottom of this. I think I covered everything in there. General. Now, general is pretty important. Let me do a close all, and then I'm going to do general. There we go. Okay. Let me just double check. Yes, you can see it. Okay. So under general fields, there's only a couple of required ones. So for example, my square footage source, I'm going to click my little magnifying glass. I'm going to use the assessor's record. How many levels are in the property? The little question mark. How many floors are there? Well, let's say this one happens to have three floors. I'm going to type in the number 3. It corresponds with 3-story, and there I go. Okay, so now I've done that. Again, I'm looking for my R's. Remember what I said earlier? My house is going to have a master bedroom. It's going to have a bedroom number 2. It knows, the program knows this because of the tax record. Tax record said there are 2 bedrooms. So now it's going to look for the dimensions for the 2 bedrooms. So as you're inputting your listing, you're going to have already measured those rooms, right? And so if your room is 14 by 11, notice I put the 14 first. If I do 11 by 14, it throws people off. I do the 14 by the 11, it gives the appearance of a larger room versus the 11 by 14. So I always start with a higher number and then go to the lower. Okay, so down here, I'm going, most properties have a dining room. If it doesn't have one, put a 0 in there. Remember that it has a living room first and a family room second. So my house currently has both. So I would need to measure both of those rooms. So when I go out on my listing appointment and I take my listing input sheet, I'm looking right here and I can see that this thing it's going to have the values already for me that I'm going to need to have in there. Everybody good with that? Parking garage, number of spaces. I knew that was coming. So I'm going to put a 2 in there. Okay. How many non-garage spaces I'm going to put now? I don't know. What does that mean? Well, that's going to be, places where the owner can park that don't include the interior of the garage. So for sure, the 2 spaces in front of the garage, but don't assume that the HOA may have a rule against that. Okay. All right. Lot size, whatever that's going to be. And so we're going to say that that's common interest. See what I'm saying? And what's the source of that? Well, the tax record said that it was common interest. So I'm going to click on assessor's records again. I really like putting off the responsibility for the answers to others. I want to make sure that I don't take the heat for that. but I'm legitimately so. That's where I got my data. Okay, so everybody good. Now, obviously, I don't have the room dimensions in there. I'm not going to put those in just yet. Features of the property. These are what's really cool. Now, here's a secret. I'm going to show you a little secret trick here. This will really speed up your process. Rather than filling in each of these things one at a time, I'm going to go over here to the right-hand side. Let me close all again real fast, and I'm going to pull up my features. I'm going to go here to all features, and I'm going to click this magnifying glass to the right of it. So now all of those things that were down there are all in one place. Okay, and so now I don't have to go searching everywhere for them. I can click on required only, and it'll pop up only those things that are required. So air conditioning, that one, did that have air conditioning? I think it did. I'm trying to remember. If I don't know, I'm definitely not going to check the answer. Otherwise, I might end up buying air conditioning. So anyway, I'd go through all this and I'd fill in the required fields. But I think there's so much more to do in there that I would probably not do only the required fields. Okay, but see all these different things about the property. Data share is going to refer to those items that are shared with other MLSs. So as I have said to you in the past, you know, the SDMLS is the best MLS you're going to have as far as marketing is concerned. But I want to also make sure that if I have anything special about this property, that it's also included, you know, because those are our fields in our MLS are going to be different than those that are in CRMLS, going to be different than clause, than different than in the MLS. They're going to have some different data fields. So I might put those in here. And so I can click on the magnifying glass that I've gotten so good about clicking on, and I can pull up for example, in this first field, accessibility features, association amenities. I can click that there. And again, these are not things that are going to be automatically populated. And so I'm waiting for this thing. Sometimes it doesn't work quite as fast as we want it to. So here we go. We'll try it again. And while it's looking up the numbers, I'm not going to spend any more time on it. But anyway, that's what this all does. Then when I get down to my fees and assessments, and once again, we're going to assume that it's got a common, it's a town home, so it's probably got some HOA dues. I would not copy the last agent's input, you know, that. So I sold this property probably, how many, 10, 15 years ago, maybe, I don't remember. I sold it quite some time ago. The homeowners association fees, I'm sure today, are very different than when I sold it. So I've always said, don't copy other people's homework. You know, do your own homework. Find out from the owner, how much are your HOA dues? Do you have a copy of your statement? Do you have anything that indicates that it's going to be increased? Okay, you know, any special assessments that are coming? Is this the only HOA? So for example, my HOA dues may be 100. They're clearly not 100, but the minute I do that, that's an R field. If I fill that in with something other than a 0, then it's going to pop up this field. It's going to ask me, it's funny, it doesn't, but it actually will require me to put in there, what's the frequency of those HOA dues? What does it reflect? And again, I can just click on this little guy here. So it's going to be monthly. I'll click on that. HOA fees include what? So, you know, in this case, common area. And again, remember, only those items that you're absolutely 100% sure of, because if you make a mistake on this, you're going to end up paying for it probably. Okay. So I'm going to click save. Are there any other fees in this community? No, there's no other fees. So I'll click on that. I've satisfied the requirement. But remember that if you're doing a property, for example, that's in Carmel Valley, you have 2 different HOAs. So you have 2 homeowners associations. So I know I've owned a lot of property in Carmel Valley where I was paying a master policy in addition to the policy for the unit that in the development that I owned. Okay. Melrose, always a big one. Remember, anything built after October of 1988 probably has Melrose on it. They kind of figured out a way to get around the restrictions placed on them on spending by Prop 13. So if the property has Melrose, let's not miss that, and let's make sure you're accurate. And that's information that your property profile should have shown you. It would have shown you what the Melrose was. And so you want to confirm that with the owner and make sure that it's accurate for one thing, and that there aren't any additional fees. So if there is a Melrose and I type in, you know, $100, for example, now it's going to want to know, you know, how frequently is it, you know, what is the You know, so in this case, that would, let's say it's a year, and I hit save, okay? The little question mark next to that is really helpful. Is the fee stated in the CFD? CFD stands for Community Facilities District, reflecting a monthly or a yearly amount, okay? And then on and on. HOA association, we'd like you to put in the name of the HOA. We'd like you to put in the phone number. Folks, that just makes it easier for the buyer's agent to find information that they might need to find. They'll usually go off of what you put in here, and you can always get that information current from the owner, okay? Property management company would be if there was a company handling that particular unit. Looks like I'm gonna have to speed up a little bit here. I've actually shown you most everything. Showing services, I kind of like this. I teach all over the country, and it's used almost universally everywhere. And part of that is because, you know, I always laugh about real estate agents dodging bill collectors, but, you know, a lot of times we don't take calls. I mean, it's the #1 complaint against attorneys is that they don't return calls. And so we don't want to become like that. But what does that mean? So we can have schedule a showing link, which puts it in the MLS that the buyer's agent just clicks on the link. It gives them some times that they want to show it. Click on the button. It sends an email to the agent. And then the owner can discuss that with the listing agent as to what they want, if the showing at that time is okay. I've used it in other states. I think it works really well. It's a free service for you. There's a 90-day free trial. You see it right there at the bottom, 90-day free trial. After that, they charge you $6,000 a day. I don't know really what they do. I don't know how much it is. I don't use it in San Diego. My agents use it. I don't use it. Okay. So, but I don't usually take listings in San Diego. I don't usually take listings because I don't compete with my agents. Remarks section, one of my favorite of all sections. Let's do a close all. I'll pull up my remarks again. So my remarks section, listen, folks, this is the opportunity for you to wax eloquent. This is the opportunity for you to say all kinds of great things about the property or about the community. That's what the remarks section is intended for. And so please do that. Please don't put in any identifying information like websites or pictures at, or your email address or your telephone number. The MLS actually scrubs for that every night about midnight, and it is a ticket. So you want to talk only about the features of the property, the features of the community, say nice things, take my sales and marketing for the real estate professional class at UCSD. I mean, there's all kinds, we call that ad smithing. You can write all kinds of great stuff. Take advantage of it. 510 characters should not be enough. Confidential remarks, that's what we share with each other. You know, dog will bite, you know, no showings on Friday, tenant requires that you wear a mask, you know, things like that. You'll certainly in this climate, you're going to put in about, you know, the PED and coronavirus and all that. Directions to the property, please don't put in Google it. I had an agent do that. It just didn't work out with us. You know, we need you to be a little more respectful. So, you know, we put in the directions to the property, you know, east to west, whatever. Advertising remarks, this is an opportunity. In advertising remarks, go crazy. Okay, you can put in your telephone number, your name, your email address, website, your more pictures at, virtual tours, branded virtual tours at. You can do a lot of things in advertising remarks. This was meant to get around what some of the, you know, the Pillows and the Goulias were doing, which is they were putting somebody else's picture next to your listing, making it look like it was somebody else's listing. And so they have to prominently display this near your listing. So take advantage of it, use it. Please don't make disparaging remarks about other brokers, things like that, okay? All right, because that is public, all right? So advertising remarks is public, regular remarks is public, confidential is not, all right? Showing instructions, you know, you can get pretty detailed on that. Supplement is really a continuation of the regular remarks section. Here's remarks. You had 510 characters. If I get down to supplemental remarks, I have another 4,000 characters. And I don't know why you don't use it. Use the whole thing. You need, you know, ask the seller at the listing appointment. Tell me some of the really cool things you like about your home. What convinced you to buy it? What about this home made it special for you? Because that may make it special for the next person. So have them email that to you. It should be pages of stuff, right? Okay. Whether the property is occupied or not is required. If it's vacant, you start typing V, vacant will show up. Central lock, remember, central lock is the lockbox for your location, for your locality. So you need to be using, if you're using a lockbox, you need to be using a central lock lockbox. I would advise against using a push button lockbox for a number of reasons, including your own safety, including the safety of the seller, and plus you have no way of knowing who's been using the box. Mandatory remarks, let's take a look at that really quick. So that's going to be where I'm going to find out whether or not my property is going to be contingent or not. So I can hit my little magnifying glass, click on one of these links. Okay, so that's going to be it is required, so you're going to have to do something with it, showing contact name, whether it's the tenant or the owner or yourself, and that's going to get me through that field. Boy, I'm doing good. So then I'm going to close all again. My last one is my sold. It won't let you pull this up until you've saved it as an active listing. And then from here, you would be able to save it as a pending or a contingent or something along that line. And then under here, you'd also be able to take it to the next level, which would be as a sold property. In that field, it's going to ask you for the other agent's name, and that name you will put in at the time of the contract. Once the contract comes together, please be sure to give credit to the other agent. If you don't do that, it's a ticket at the multiple listing service. You need to give credit where credit is due. You'll need to have their number. You can find that readily, easily under membership up here at the top, okay? Other questions? Sometimes looks like the agent's number is entered as the seller's number. Is that to spare the seller, and is it legitimate? So Deirdre, the answer is sometimes the agent wants all the calls to go through them. If you're going to have it that way, you need to be accessible. Much like our MLS, our national NAR model rule says that if you use a lockbox other than a lockbox for the locality, then you must respond within 4 hours. That's a code of ethics issue. Okay, so the answer is if the agent puts their number in there, fine, but that means they need to respond to you. It could very well be that the agent doesn't want you calling the seller directly and to make an appointment, and that's, you know, that's legitimate. You can do that. Obviously, I'd like to see that in the listing agreement. I doubt I will, but if I pull up the listing agreement, if you know, we require the listing agent to send us a copy of the listing agreement, then we'll be looking for that. But yeah, the agent can put in the sellers, put in their telephone number. You're talking about under the showings, under remarks. So here under showing instructions, sure. Sometimes it'll have a tenant in it. The tenant is or is not cooperative. You know, you might put in, the agent might say, hey, you know, I need to contact the tenant first before you go to show the property. Tenant's requiring that, you know, the PED form be signed, all that kind of stuff. So that's going to go in under my showing instructions. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay, all right. Other questions? I cannot believe I got that done. I had a couple of other paths to take you down, but you're welcome. Thank you, Deirdre. A couple of other paths to take you down, but then it looks like we did okay on that after all. Now, something I do want to show you. So I'm not going to obviously save this listing because you know, it's not a real listing, and in fact, it may even be listed by somebody else right now. So I'm going to X out of this. It's going to say, do you want to save your changes? I'm going to say no. Now remember, I'd only saved it as a partial. I did not save it as a full listing. Okay, so that would be different. I can't just delete it if I saved it as a full listing. In this case, I gave up the ghost. I said, wow, Marie, I said I didn't get my listing signed after all, so I'm going to say no. And then when I look at my listings, when I look at my active, you'll see that I don't have it in there. And so the other way for me to check is to look at my partials, and you'll see there's no partial in there either. Okay, all right, so that was how I did it. This is why, oh, there it is, America Way. I lied to you. So, okay, so now I'm going to have to go over here and I'm going to select an action, and it's going to, I'll just go ahead and delete it at some point. Okay, all right, if I click on it, then it should, where's my delete up here? Delete. I'm going to delete it, and it's going to say, okay, you clicked on it, so you want to delete temporary, and the answer is yes, I want to delete it. Again, folks, don't try this at home. You want to be careful not to delete it. Well, you really can't delete an active listing. So, okay, everybody good? Let me pull up really fast my my going away card. So if you want to be on our email, I send out an email once a week that tells you, it's got clickable links on it so you can avoid all the going to all the different websites. It's got clickable links. You just go ahead and click on the clickable link, and then it takes you straight to the webinar. So tomorrow morning, we will be doing how to read a preliminary title report at 10 a.m. You'll just click on the link from the newsletter. It'll take you straight to that. It's just an easier way to get to things that I'm teaching, at least. SDR is helping me in modifying the process to make it more uniform across other fields. So send me an email, say, please add me to your email update. I don't put people on it unless they ask to be on it. There are hundreds of people on there. Maybe you don't open it every week. Maybe you open it up, every day. I mean, I don't know, but hopefully you find some use out of that. I usually put in current events like what's going on with COVID, where the money is right now. There's a whole bunch of money available for all of us and more rounds of it that are coming. And with the governor doing the shutdown again, the governors, they're going to have to pay for that. So there's more money coming from that as well. So the government, there's some Fifth Amendment rights to the Constitution that have to do with the takings clause and whether or not the government shutting businesses down is maybe a taking. So anyway, without getting political, that's what that means. Send me an email and say, please put me on the list, and I'll put you on there, and then you'll have all that data. Any other questions, anything anybody has? Good refresher, got to run. Thank you, Marie. Always good to hypothetically see you. I wish you all the very best. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at 10.